All right, this episode is brought to you by Coffee Cola. On a hot day like today, it's a scorching day in Ontario, Canada. You can check out Coffee Cola. It's a cool alternative to coffee. It's a carbonated coffee drink that smells like coffee, tastes like coffee, and it keeps you much cooler. Mixes with your best bourbon or whiskey on a Friday night with your friends. You can check them out at coffeecolacanada.com. Also brought to you by Chatter 365. It's a new app for your iPhone and Android that helps you keep in contact with business, family, and your community. I use this app exclusively to help communicate, and I love it. Chatter365.com. I got Sera-Lys McArthur here right now. She's joining us for Meet Me for Coffee, and you've seen her on most recently on Burden of Truth. A lot of you big fans of the show called Outlander. I know my wife is going to probably freak out if I scream that a bit more, but I'm also more interested in the Arctic air part of your life. You know, I'm a big fan of Adam Beach.
Mm-hmm.
And
Me too.
by the way, how are you?
I'm great. Hi. Thank you for the intro. That was awesome.
Hey, well, you know what? We got a lot to talk about. Adam Beach actually sat beside me on a plane. I was going to Los Angeles to do some business, and this guy walks in and sits beside me. And obviously, he's tired. He's been filming all day or all the whole week, and he lays down on the tray and he looks at me and like, dude, it's Adam Beach. So we ended up talking together, and
Yeah.
very cool guy. And I made a bit of a joke when he walked in, and man, aren't you supposed to be flying this plane? You're on Arctic Air. He's like, no, man, I'm done. So how'd you get into acting? Let's start there. How'd you get into acting?
Okay. Sure. Well, I kind of lucked out. I was raised in Regina, Saskatchewan, and for those of you from not Canada, we actually do say it that way. But anyway, yeah, there wasn't a lot going on in the acting world. I certainly didn't have any actors in my family, but I started doing kids modeling, and then there was one CBC miniseries that came to town called Revenge of the Land, and they were looking for a young Métis girl, which is like a mixed blood, like Caucasian and indigenous heritage character. And I got a call from the agency to go in for the audition, and like I didn't really know how to act. I mean, every kid knows how to play pretend, right? But yeah, you learn your lines, you show up, you're nervous, and then I walked in and they were pretty excited because I bore a resemblance to the actress already chosen to play my mom, which was like a bigger character on the miniseries. And so yeah, I got the part, and then I had a really awesome time on set, and I basically never looked back after that. I just wanted to keep doing it, so I started taking classes, including like singing and dancing classes, and then I told myself I was going to move to New York because I wanted to pursue musical theater like on Broadway, and I went to school there, and yeah, and then the rest is kind of history. I just kept going.
And for those of us who don't know this, CBC is a very big deal here. We watch CBC for a lot of shows like Arctic Air, Mr. Dress Up growing up. We also have hockey on Saturdays, obviously not right now, but on the Olympics. And it's a very big a broadcasting company that is funded by the government. It's our public way. It's like radio and television. So it's a very good start. It's nationwide. Arctic Air.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Arctic Air.
Sure. Yeah.
Your role. How'd that happen?
So yeah, I like auditioned, and I think I had probably met Adam at a party in LA once because I lived in LA for about a year, but I hadn't spoken to him in quite a while. But I thought I should be like, "Hey, Adam, like I'm auditioning for this," and I guess he like showed my picture to the casting people right there and then, so I'm sure that helped. But yeah, it was a good old-fashioned self-tape. And I was living in Toronto, and it was filming in Vancouver, and it kind of came up at the last minute. I think I had auditioned, and then a couple months went by, and then I was going to go do a non-union feature film, which is like a big no-no in the ACTRA community. That's our union. but I hadn't worked in so long that I was like, I'm just gonna go. So I had already like a flight booked to go back to Saskatchewan to film this. And then I got a call from my agent that day, like the day before I was supposed to leave. And he's like, you booked Arctic Air and you're going to be needed in Vancouver tomorrow. And so, yeah, I just called the other filmmaker and I was like, I'm sorry, I can't. And I had to back out last minute. But then I went to Vancouver and started working on Arctic Air. So it was all very exciting because that was my first, I was a recurring character. So it was first time I was like a cast member of a big television show, like primetime drama.
It was super huge. It's one of the biggest ones that they actually ever produced on the network, and I'm surprised it ended. I was getting into it at the end, and obviously after you meet Adam Beach, you're like, I'm just going to watch the rest of this. I'm actually going to tune in.
Yeah.
He told me that he auditioned for ER, and he was going to be a doctor on the series, and he was studying. So he actually gave me a bit of an insight into studying for parts, and
Mm-hmm.
he's like, I'm studying medical journals and being a doctor and trying to get myself in that place. Is that something that you do to get yourself in a role?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, a lot of the characters I've played are quite close to, like, they don't have a huge difference between me and them, except for when I play period dramas. And that's when there's a lot of research needed to go into like customs and how you would move your body, how you would speak to someone or not speak to someone, how you would gesture. And then also, of course, the language is a big one. So there's a lot of learning lines and inflection and just rehearsing over and over so you can make it sound like that's your first language. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of research that goes into like each part. And yeah, if you want to do like a law enforcement role or something, you have to learn kind of the protocols and everything, how to break down a room and like how to use weapons and that sort of thing. It's actually really fun.
And we talked about languages there for a second.
Mhm.
You speak Nakota, right?
Yes, but not fluently. I definitely know some Nakota and I have learned it for different roles. And so because of learning it for different roles and even just for some auditions, I've become a lot more associated with, like, I've become used to it and I can pick it up faster now and I know some root words. And so it's actually a very similar language to a few other indigenous languages like Lakota and Dakota. So that helps me with those kind of roles as well.
Enlightening yourself and the whole indigenous community.
Mm-hmm.
I've just reading over the last couple of years. I know, obviously I'm Canadian, but I'm not native, so I don't really know. I know how things used to be here in Canada. I know, the heritage, the background. I have a few friends that are native as well. Sorry, indigenous, is that's the proper.
Either one.
Yeah,
I mean, at this
I get kind
point,
of
we're all
confused. I
friends,
get
so
kind of
they can
confused. Indigenous,
basically.
Aboriginal, everything. Um,
Yeah, First Nations.
yeah, but the cool thing is each, if you're a Nakota or you're an Ojibwe or a Chippewa, you all have your own language, right?
Yeah, and some of them are similar to each other in some ways, and some of them are completely different. You couldn't understand each other at all. There's actually there's an old sign language that existed like before American Sign Language, obviously, but because there were so many tribes, tribal nations, especially in the plains, there's a plains sign language so they could communicate with each other.
And that's what makes me extra proud to interview you, because you have roots pretty deep into Canada, further than I do. Obviously, I'm Greek, and my parents immigrated here, but you've got the indigenous roots, which is very important. A lot of people need to learn about the beginning times in Canada. And you grew up in is it Yukon? I heard you talking in a previous interview about
Oh,
growing up in the Yukon.
Saskatchewan.
That's
No,
Saskatchewan.
Saskatchewan. Yeah.
Saskatchewan, yeah, yeah.
Still cold though, sometimes as cold as the Yukon. But I've actually never been to the Yukon. Just Arctic Air had us up in Northwest Territory sometimes.
Yeah, that was right. That was right. But yeah, like the Saskatchewan, flying all over Canada takes so long, and it's so pricey to go around Canada. What do you like
True.
about acting in the United States?
I just think it's a fun like difference to be okay. So there's a thing in New York, like if you see the Made in NY like sticker on the trailers where all the film people are, and you go around town, you see those sometimes set up, and you're always like, I want to be in that. And then I did a role on a show called Friends from College on Netflix, and I finally got my little like NY trailer, so that was cool. And just to meet new people and kind of see if there's any differences. There's most things are pretty much the same between the US and Canada. There's probably some small differences, but yeah, I think it's just fun. Like I got to work with Kobe Smulders on that one. So she's a Canadian girl that's done extremely well in Hollywood. It's refreshing and like inspirational to be around people like that.
That's incredible. And you had one of your, I made it moments with the trailer with I Love NY kind of on there. So that's
Yeah.
pretty cool. It's another win-win for Canada. How do you drink your coffee? Do you drink Tim Hortons coffee? Is there a Tim Hortons down in New York
Yeah.
City?
I think there is one, but I think it's all, I can't remember now, but I'm pretty sure there's one down at 42nd. But I'm one of those Canadians that can't digest milk.
Yeah, same.
So if I want to have like, fancy milk, I usually go to one of the independent coffee places around.
I usually frequent around those. That's why I kind of made this podcast to talk about coffee and different roasts. And I'm obsessed with coffee, so I like the mocha taste.
Nice.
Um,
Well, I started drinking Stumptown coffee. You can get it at Whole Foods. It's made in Brooklyn, and they've got some really interesting roasts, like with like chocolate kind of undertones or vanilla-y ones. And they're kind of like that fancy hipster coffee.
coffee makes the world go round, and I've really come to realize that, especially when you're doing like 5 to 10 interviews straight in a
I
day.
bet.
Uh, it can be time consuming, and then there's lots of room for error. So you got to keep focused, and it's a good way to keep focused. How do you memorize your lines? Speaking of focus, like how do you block everything out to memorize lines? I know I have a good memory, but I don't know if I could take another shot at acting. But how many lines do you get a show in The Burden of the Truth to memorize, and how do you block everything out to remember things?
It's challenging. It's one of those things that gets easier with experience. So the more you do it, the more it's like a muscle, right? So your brain like can start retaining things. And there's like little tricks, like I think having dialogue is much easier to remember than a monologue, because you're not on your own. You can like react to what somebody else is saying, and like hopefully you're reacting like in the moment, and the other line kind of just comes out of you because it's like a natural progression in that way. But yeah, it's a lot of repetition. I have an app called Rehearsal Pro, and that helps me a lot. I just put my scripts in there, and then I go through and I highlight it on my iPad, and then you can cover it up and like test yourself, and you can also record it and just play it on loop over and over and over. And then we we run lines a lot in between setups. So that helps too.
How do you put your scripts in there? You just upload it from your phone, or?
My email, yeah. It's like I have the when you sign up for Rehearsal Pro, they give you a little account, and then you can just
Wow.
email to it, or you can you can just directly like airdrop it to yourself.
A rising star from Canada, give me all her secrets. That's pretty cool. Maybe
I
I'll
know.
give your tips for sure. Uh,
Yeah.
let's talk about acting with Kristen Cruick. She actually uh, was one of the main characters in Smallville. That must be pretty cool.
Mhm. That was really cool. And I gotta say, I kept it under wraps while I was on set, but like I think it's safe enough now. Like I was definitely a fan of Kristen going into this. I had, I think I'd seen her in passing at a couple events before. I knew friends that knew her, but I used to watch Smallville all the time, and that was part of the reason when I left New York the first time and moved to Vancouver. That was part of the reason why, because Smallville, among other shows, were being filmed in Vancouver, and there wasn't a lot being filmed in New York at the time because it was just too expensive and they didn't have any tax incentives, which they do now. And so that's why there's a lot more going on. But yeah, so I was like, oh, I want to go to where Smallville's made. And so, yeah, like actually getting to work with her was like a really big attraction to doing that part for me.
And this series, Burden of Truth, it originally came on the CBC, right?
Hmm. Yeah, it's a CBC show. And because Kristen is such a CW darling, I think they know her so well over there. She's one of the executive producers on the series. So she was able to um, like make sure that the show would be picked up on the CW. And I think it's actually a really good turn of events for other Canadian shows are getting picked up on the CW now. So it's a good little trend that it started.
It just takes one person to open up that door, and that can
Yeah.
keep happening. There's a lot of cool shows on the CBC. One was called was it Mr. D with that
Hmm.
Jerry D guy? That was
Yeah.
awesome. I binge watched that on Netflix, and there's another one called
Isn't he in
Working
something
Mom.
else?
Yeah, he's in
He's,
something else as well.
I forget, but I just saw him recently and people were like, oh, he's really great. I'm like, oh, that's our Canadian like comedian. He's like, yeah, it's great to see that he's doing well.
I originally discovered him. See, my father, he's an educator, and they go to these conferences where they hire comedians. I don't know why they're hiring comedians, but um, this guy
Hey, they gotta
came.
work too,
Yeah.
so.
So Jerry D actually performed at his conference or whatever he was at. He's like, this guy's pretty good. Check him out. Because I guess he used to be an old teacher. His original
Mm.
job was a teacher. So that's how he kind of converts it all to Mr. D kind of thing. And he's like, this guy's pretty funny. So I watched it. That's how I discovered the guy. And you know what? Like, he's pretty funny. There's a lot of comedians out there that are not funny personally.
Hmm.
But this guy, he's really got it. And when we talk about the other series is called Working Moms. You ever heard of
Hmm.
that before?
Yeah, for sure. I think I auditioned for the first season or something.
Yeah, the main character, she was in Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and then she left the cast to join that. That could be another show that could go pretty big in the States as well.
Yeah, I probably should. I think she's American, isn't she, the lead
I
character?
believe so, but I don't want to confirm it because it might be wrong.
Yeah, but I think I looked into it once and it was like it's kind of like her show idea. So yeah, it's interesting that it became like a Canadian show before an American show, but
Yeah, absolutely.
probably on its way to being shown down here if it isn't already.
What are some other projects you're working on?
Okay, so I mean, nothing right now. Just kidding. No, everything kind of stopped, which we know, but I'm a producer as well, like an emerging producer. So I'm working with there's a Cuthand. She's a Cree writer and filmmaker, and she has a feature that we've had in development for several years. And then also, we just got funding from the Harold Greenberg Fund for a shorts to feature for that project.
Awesome.
And so I'm excited about that one. We haven't confirmed, but I'm probably going to act in it. This probably because it'll save us money, but
Yeah, why not?
but also it's a really really cool part. So I'd be like very excited. Hopefully I am able to act. We have to make sure that like Bell Media is cool with that and everything. But either way, it'll be a great experience for me as a producer. And then I have like these other projects that I've finished filming that haven't been released yet. So I'll be pretty excited when those are ready. They're all kind of just waiting in the wings for release. And I know that, a lot of film festivals have been canceled or postponed. So that's probably part of it. But one of them is called Monkey Beach, and it's based on a Canadian novel by Eden Robinson. And I have a supporting role in that one, so I'm really looking forward to that. And then there is another one called The First Encounter, which is a sci-fi kind of alien movie. And we're probably going to be doing some reshoots of that this summer. So I would assume it'll be finished, maybe hopefully in the next few months after the summer. So hopefully by the end of the year. And then there's another one called Don't Say Its Name, and that's a monster movie, and it's kind of it's like a mystery horror kind of genre, and it was really fun to shoot even though it was freezing cold.
Where'd you film it?
In Calgary or outside Calgary at this like little camp place called Camp Kiwanis.
In the
uh,
wintertime, obviously.
in the winter, and it was during one of the cold snaps, and then like they had a Chinook come in after that, and then it got cold again. But there were times where uh, the cameras froze, and so they just wouldn't turn on. So they had to change like the schedule so we could do the interior scenes instead of the exterior scenes. But there's all sorts of things that happen when you're filming at like 40 below, because like if there's blood, that fake blood stuff that like freezes quicker than, you know, like water or anything would. So it could really like mess up your skin if it's on you. Also like holding like my character is really badass. So I got to like use, I think, like how many different types of guns, at least 3 different types of guns. And sometimes like the barrels would get so cold, like my hand would almost stick to it, you know? So you're like, do I wear gloves in the scene or not wear gloves in the scene? Like, you know?
Electronics struggle to work on under 40, 40 below as well. So
Yeah. So that was why we had to switch. And then, yeah, sometimes we were filming all night and we were like running into the cars, like the trucks in between, and like turning on the heat and then like getting out again and trying to do the scenes and act. And it was crazy.
you know, I never really understood. Like, I'm a big James Bond fan. I saw 1917.
Hmm.
Remember that movie? That was a wicked movie.
Oh, yeah, I love that movie.
I saw it in theaters, and I want to see the James
Yeah.
Bond movie. And it's like, I saw the trailer, and then it was postponed. So I didn't really understand what the heck was going on at the beginning of all this COVID-19 stuff that I'm pretty sick of hearing right now. And
Right.
but I was just thinking about with all your projects, like you're not the only one. It's going to be, I don't know how it's going to be worked out where all these actors have all their projects and stuff rolled out after all this.
Yeah.
It's going to be quite the market. Like I don't really understand how it's going to happen. People have Netflix shows like Queen of the South. I know I was talking to some of the people involved with that show. Um, they're trying to roll out season 5, but they had to stop filming. You know, like so
Hmm.
they have to go back to work and they got to figure out how to film the rest of it. Obviously, social distancing,
Right.
and yeah, Bond
Testing.
25, and that's going to come out at some point, and you have people who are hoping that they still have the part in that show that they auditioned for if it's still going to happen, right?
Yeah, it's been crazy. And we have no answers yet, you know, because all these companies, like, hopefully the money that they, you know, said was there will still be there, but we have no guarantee of that. So I'm kind of, I guess, lucky. I was like kind of in a bit of a lull. Like, I just finished up on Don't Say Its Name, and that's going to be on Super Channel, by the way.
Okay.
And I don't know when it'll be done, but probably, I think within this year. Hopefully sooner, like summer or something. I don't know.
Well,
I'll check.
editing and stuff takes such a long time too, right?
It does, especially if you have like special effects, or even if you don't, but like especially if you have special effects to put in, like it's or VFX, it's like you never know when those are going to be ready. But yeah, so I'm happy that at least there's going to be stuff like coming out at some point. It'll be a bummer if we can't go to theaters with some of them, you know, but it seems like actually having a digital release is probably the best bet for a lot of things now, so people can see it.
Absolutely. You were an Outlander, which is
Hmm.
really, really big right now on Netflix. Can you
Hmm.
describe auditioning for that that awesome show?
Sure. Okay. So first of all, they had this one scene, which was like my character's first scene, where she's holding the baby and she's talking to Roger in French, and then her tribesman comes in and she starts speaking to him in Mohawk. And it did say in the audition, like, if you don't speak Mohawk, like, don't worry about it. You can either speak in another indigenous language or, like, you know, just never mind. But the audition sides themselves were in English. So getting the French translated wasn't so hard, because you can kind of do that on your own and just verify with somebody who speaks French, which isn't too hard to find in Canada, you know. But yeah, so I reached out to a Mohawk friend of mine, Devery Jacobs, and I was like, hey, like, are you going in for this? Like, like, can you help me get this translated? And I just know, as an actor who's done period dramas and you know, various indigenous roles, that like it doesn't really make sense to speak English in the audition, even because, you know, how I'm speaking to you right now, how would I change the way that I'm talking to sound like I'm from the 18th century and I'm speaking another language? Like, basically me opening my mouth is going to take you out of it. Even if like the producers and directors are like, don't worry about it. It's like, yeah, we should probably worry about it, you know? So there's a
Exactly.
few different approaches you can do. Like if you don't know that language, or you do know another language, or you know bits and snippets from another language because you've had to learn it for a role, you can just kind of substitute those words in. But I went out of my way to like actually learn the Mohawk as best I could, because I really like learning languages, and it just makes more sense to me to like, I don't know, it just feels more authentic. And I want to be respectful of other people's their cultural stories, you know? So yeah, so I went in. I actually had a few extra days with it because I was busy doing an audiobook, and that was key because I got like a couple extra days to go over the language, right? And I had taped it with my friend just to see, like, in case I didn't get a chance to go in. This was in Toronto. Like maybe I can just send the tape. But then when I watched the tape, I kind of like I you know, I nitpicked myself a little bit. And so I felt really prepared when I went in for the audition, long story short. So I went in at like 9 a.m. on like a Monday or something. And then I did one take and I nailed it. And I was like, yes, that's how I felt when
Where exactly was this episode filmed?
it was filmed in Scotland. So they had reached out to Lisa Pearson, who is a Toronto casting director, and the people from England, or from Scotland, sorry, they wanted in actual indigenous actors to portray the native characters in the season. And I think because of immigration and everything, and maybe even some of the union rules or something, it was just made a lot more sense for them to get Canadians instead of Americans. So we kind of had, you know, they had luck on our
Advantage because
side.
the
Yeah.
Commonwealth kind of thing.
Yeah,
Which is
exactly.
cool. That's awesome. They got the
Mhm.
real thing going over there.
Yeah, and so they brought everyone over. They had like, you know, over 100 extras, and also like several actors, and a lot of us knew each other, or knew people that knew each other, and were there. And it was kind of wild to all be in Scotland together. We're like, what are we doing? We're at work. Like what?
Yeah, Scotland is something on my bucket list. Uh,
It's great.
Talk about there's a scene said somebody was caught on fire
hmm
in Outlander, and I remember watching it. You know, obviously the beginning of the show. Have you watched it from the beginning at all, or?
Yeah, I'm actually like, you know, I'm not up on the most recent season because I'm trying to like save it a little bit because I
Yeah.
know it's not going to be new for a while. Like they're not going to have any more new ones for a while. But yeah, no, I'm caught up on up till the end of season 4.
Yeah, so like we basically like we started watching it, and then like we didn't understand what happened where she went to remove the rock, and then all of a sudden she was in like a different dimension or something,
Oh
right?
yeah.
We were watching a show called Dark before this. It's from Germany. It's kind of like it's better than Stranger Things, and it's same thing with time travel. So that kind of messed us up at the beginning, right? So we had to rewind it.
Oh cool.
It's a pretty cool show. So describe. Let's go back to the guy
Mhm.
burning and your part in it and how cool it was to be close to someone who was on fire.
Yeah, it was really crazy. Like I hadn't seen that before, and hopefully people don't really have to see a burning
You don't want to
man
see that.
at
It's just
close
cool for
range.
TV. That's about it.
I'm sure it got seared into my mind. And you know, it was great. So basically, there's a part where my character, spoiler alert, walks onto the pyre with her lover. And the stunt double was already on there in a flame retardant suit, like lit on fire. And the other two actors have to like watch my character walk and be, you know, horrified that I'm actually doing that. And so they were like, could we get an eye line? And then they were like, well, can Sera-Lys just like walk that way? And then they're like, well, how close can she get? So I got to walk like as close as I was allowed to get. It was probably like, I don't know, 6 feet away or something like that. And then I had to like dive out of the camera, like so that they could just have only a clean shot.
it's a pretty cool scene, but you know, at least you're not the guy on fire, or you're not the stunt
Yeah.
woman or the
So then
stunt.
that was the other thing. So the stunt woman, she's awesome and she's done so much stuff. If you look her up, she's in like everything. And she also does a lot of other Outlander stuff, like for the lead character Claire and everything. But so she had to be in a flame retardant suit, dressed like me on the outside, and then like walk up to the other stunt double, and they both had to burn. And so when she was doing that, her foot, because she can't see very well inside the suit, right? And she has a little straw that she's like breathing air through. Her foot stumbled when she was going onto the pyre, and so she kind of had to like very not gracefully like get herself up there and then get into this final pose, hug position. And when she stumbled, she like face planted into the other burning stunt double, and so the straw she was breathing through
Melted.
melted and like burned her lips. So I saw her in the loo after, in the honey wagon after that, and she was putting like burn cream on her lips, and I was like, oh my god, what happened? And she like told me. I was like, oh my goodness, that's crazy.
Would you ever do your own stunts?
I've done actually a few. I think the fire ones I'll leave for other people to do, or anything involving like a gun going off close to my face or something like that. I'll probably leave for the stunt doubles. But I have done some of my own stunts in a short film that will be coming out at some point also. It's called Heaven and Earth, a Ritual. But I really liked that because I've trained in Kung Fu and like other martial arts, and I've always just been a really big action fan. So getting a little bruised up is not too bad for me. It's actually like kind of fun, you know?
At
So
least you're not jumping off buildings and stuff like that.
yeah, like I'm not gonna do anything crazy. This was like, okay, the coolest thing I got to do was like jump on a table with a knife and like jump on the guy's back, and then he had to like slam me against the wall and I fell. That's all I
You,
had
you
to
could have
do.
threw in a backflip or something.
Yeah.
Kung Fu is pretty cool. My girls do Kung Fu, or they used to
Oh,
do
good.
Kung Fu. Uh, it has a lot of, it creates a lot of discipline for you, and
Hmm.
also I did martial arts as well growing up. There's a lot of muscle memory, or like you're really fast to react to things, and it also
Yeah,
keeps you in shape and your mind clear. You
exactly.
still train or no?
I do. And now you're making me miss it because I haven't been doing it as diligently since all of this started. I do have like a martial arts school that I can access, on Zoom. So, but probably I should start doing it. It just doesn't feel as
It doesn't
fun when
feel right. It doesn't feel right.
you're like in your apartment, like, it doesn't feel like you're giving it the kind of respect that it needs, but it's still better than not doing it. So,
Absolutely. And you
yeah.
know, you're not the only one who feels that way. And
Hmm.
like for me, I like to go to the gym, but obviously it's not open, and they're talking now that we may have to make an appointment when we want to work out. So they'll be waiting for us. So I'll be accountable for going. So
Yeah.
it's kind of scaring me at the same time. And going to a bar now, you can't go to the bar. You can't have one drink, sit up there and have one beer and then leave. You have to make a reservation, sit at the table, and you have to be out of there in an hour. So things are changing. You're not the only one who feels that way. Uh,
Yeah, that doesn't sound great. That doesn't sound fun. But maybe we'll take it for now in hopes that it'll go back to what we recognize as normal someday soon.
yeah, absolutely. So you're saying you would like to do action films.
That'd be great.
Who's the one actor that you would like to meet, the one action film actor, or an actor that you'd like to star in a film with?
uh I'd love to be in a Liam Neeson movie. I think I just love the kind of the energy in those movies. Even though they're all kind of getting to be the same movie over and
Yeah,
over, they seem
taken
funny.
one, two. Are we up to four? We're up to four or three.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, there's tons of people I would really, really love to work with who I admire. And Gal Gadot, obviously, she's like a big um, inspiration to me. I think we look really similar. So I don't know if we'd have to play sisters or something, but
Possibly.
that would be awesome. I'd be intimidated that she'd show me up, but that'd probably be the kind of challenge I needed.
Well, Sera-Lys, I really appreciate it. She drinks black coffee because the milk bothers her, and I'm in the same
Only
boat.
from only from Timmy's. Otherwise, I
Yeah,
use oat milk or almond milk.
it's the cream. It's really the cream. It really like you feel so weird
Yeah.
after that. But black coffee is the way to go, or nothing in it. I don't know how you say it, but that's the way I drink it. I drink coffee cola now because it's obviously they're my sponsors,
I
and
want to try that. That looks great.
you know what? I'll ship you a box if you want.
Whoa, that'd be dope. I'd be so
Do they
thrilled.
ship cross border now, or is it
I
that?
think they do, but it might take a while. Anyway, we can figure it out.
Yeah, yeah. So you know what? You're making Canada proud. Your Indigenous roots. Keep going with that. Hopefully, we see you star in a film soon. And next
Hmm.
time we will meet for coffee in person.
Hmm.
Down the road. It's only 45 minutes away from me. When you're in town next time, coffee's on me. It's black
Awesome.
coffee, and I will always remember that.
All
Thanks a
right,
lot.
sweet. Holler at you.
Yeah.